Okay, welcome, Laura Patricia Martin.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Me too. I am genuinely excited to jump into this conversation with you. I've been waiting for a long time to do this recording and have this opportunity to talk to you and to showcase your knowledge and the work that you're doing with our listeners. So, Laura, you are an IBS anxiety and trauma specialist. Is that correct?
Yes, I am.
Okay, I'm just going to jump in and say, just can you tell me what does that entail? Like, how do you work with people? What is that?
Yeah, that's the most common thing I get. People are like, what? Like the head tilts. They're like, what?
Huh?
I'm like, it's a thing. So IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, is a nervous system dysregulation at the end of the day, right? Like we often think it's a food thing, but it's a metabolism thing, it's a nervous system thing. So from my own life experience and my studies and things like that, that compartmentalized with anxiety, because those things go hand in hand. So I specialize essentially in the gut-brain connection and nervous system regulation, but that's too many words. So it's just, I help people with their trauma and I help people with their IBS anxiety. And I don't really know anyone that has been through trauma that doesn't also have health issues, and so we got to really start to look at that. And the body can't necessarily heal if she's actually in this fight or flight from a nervous system or from a metabolic state either. So it's nourishing the body and the mind to work together to ultimately thrive. And I think that word is definitely overused nowadays, but it's so fitting to really move forward.
Yeah. And how does it look? What does your work look like? Do you coach people one-to-one? Do you do classes? Are you a content creator? Tell us about that, please.
All the dang things I do. If you guys are into human design, I'm a self-projected projector. So I love speaking. It's my way to process things. And I love putting on. So we do master classes, probably once a month. We do a master class, sometimes free, sometimes paid. Like we have, a 14-day immersion coming up soon. And then we have masterminds, and then we have one-to-one coaching. And then I love speaking and doing paid speaking events and panels and, being guest speaking into other people's programs, all the things. Plus content, like our Instagram is amazing and things like that.
All right. Well, we will drop all those links there as well in the show notes for anyone that's listening, for sure. When someone is engaging with you and with the work that you are putting out there in the world, what are they doing? Like, are they following a diet? Are they being coached? Are they reading things? Like, what is this process like? Is it a certain period of time? Like you mentioned, like an intensive, yeah.
Is this before they come into my world or after they come into my world?
Oh, that's good. I was thinking about like as you're working with them and as they're on this path, but please do start with right before they come into your world as well.
Yeah, so majority of women that come into my world struggle with disordered eating because they have been in pain for so long. It's not like they first just got diagnosed with IBS. They've had IBS and they've tried everything and absolutely nothing is working. And now they have extensive food anxiety. They've dealt with trauma. They've had these life events that everyone just kind of keeps throwing diets at them. And they're like, great, I know how to perfectly follow a diet. How do I not do that? Like, how do I actually reclaim my life again and re-enter this joy and re-enter this pleasure and re-enter this flow, which you don't really see when you start to Google IBS. It's like elimination diets. Let's do low FODMAP. Let's take this medicine. And it's this new, very great marketing space that's happening in the world, gut health. And so when they come into my world, I always work with this, like our company pillars are SHE. So the first one is like self-knowledge. You need to learn why you work the way you work, right? And so we'll go through that process because yes, I'm very left brain. I love science. I love this stuff. Like I will do that, but we live in fear of our body without ever understanding her. We let our entire lives over the age, I don't know, my first diet was at like 12 years old. We let other people tell us how to eat. We learned how to pick up a fork and a knife and cut food and things like that. And then we got into calorie counting, and then we got into this, and then we got into eat your carbs if you're in sports and do carb overloads and do this. But like, why am I doing that? Like, I don't understand. I don't even know like how digestion works and like, I thought it was in my gut. I'm like, oh wait, it actually starts in your brain. Hold on a second here. Like, let me work back. And when we work this process, no one can take that from you. you no longer are in fear of your body. So we work on that, right? This is where programs come into my style of running our business and our product suite and stuff like that, because you need information, right? And then the next part is integration, right? So that H is healing, right? Healing, like how do I do this? Like, what do I do with this? And so it's healing and then embodiment. So it's just comes natural to you. But like now we have to actually work through the roadblocks of staying consistent and doing it in our lives, and not working with like the old paradigm of being the good girl and doing all this kind of stuff that we are very prone to doing. Like, I am a good girl when I follow this diet. And when someone's like, no, there is no diet, you're like, what? Like you like eat out of the way and you don't want to do it. And so really it's learning how we work, understanding our liver, our pancreas, our thyroid, our adrenals, our gut health, our mental health, how it all works, so that when life happens, which it will, you will have flare-ups from time to time, you will feel bloated, your hormones are going to go whack out, especially as we age, and you're going to be like, what the raviolis is going on with my body? Like, what is going on here? And when you understand what's going on, you no longer fear it. And so you know you're on your progression of healing continually every single day. And then it's the embodiment piece, where it's just what you live and breathe and do. And, you know, usually that's my one-to-ones and things of that nature. And that's around 6 months, it starts to be like, oh, this is so natural to me. Like, I know how to go to the grocery store. I know how to go out to eat. I know how to, you know, talk to my friends and family. I know how to, it's not even just like, I know how to live with this, because yes, we heal things. We get people off medications. You actually reclaim your life again, which is really cool. But you know, it's getting your voice back after so many years of being that good girl and thinking someone knows better than you. You get to the end and you're like, oh, like I can actually vocalize for what I need and start to make this progression moving forward with my health. When I go to the doctor's office, when I'm out to eat, things like that, that isn't in a over compulsive way that we're very much used to, of like, I'm gluten-free, dairy-free, soy-free, eggs, no, like all these kind of things. Like it's not fun, it's stressful. And you actually just get to sit there with like making the decisions for you in that present moment that are best for you and moving forward from there.
And that is the very foundation of menstrual cycle awareness, people. I love it. I love how much that maps onto it. I also find that everything you're saying is incredibly challenging to the like heal your gut space that's out there in the world. You know, like I'm listening to this like, wait, what? You could do that with, and it reminds me a little bit of the intuitive eating approach, and like the ways that I've explored that in the past as well, of that, like, so there's no diet, you know, so that so that's the thing, is like listening to the body and exactly what it needs. And it maps so much onto, you know, cycle tracking and cycle awareness and hormonal awareness and aligning with your strengths, and all of that, all of those kinds of all of those things that we're always working towards. And yeah, I want to zoom in on that a little bit, because my mind is a little bit blown to hear someone in the like gut microbiome space like putting this out there. Because even like whenever I even just like word association here, you know, heal your gut and microbiome, I get these like happy associations, but it's always this feeling of like, if I just do the things, if I eliminate everything and then build and go down this road and like figure out exactly what's going to inflare it, that like one day I'm going to have like the happiest gut microbiome ever, and I'm going to live in total peace and happiness, and it's all going to be fine. And the only reason I'm not living like that now is because I haven't done the hardcore like elimination approach to it. What do you think about that? Is that it's probably a pretty typical way of thinking, isn't it?
It's the way of thinking about this, right? But it doesn't have a trauma informed approach, right? Where a lot of us struggle with eating disorders or disordered eating. Like I mean, maybe it's just my circle of whatever, but like everyone I know has had a diet since whatever, and we don't really know how to eat. So why is it that, again, we go back to this, I'm a good girl if I follow X, Y, Z. And it always happens with my clients, and I did this too, right? Like I know this, yes, I have the studies and the certifications and things like that, but I like my best thing like to put on my little resume thing is like my life experience of it at the end of the day. Absolutely. And I remember going through it and being like, okay, so I just cut out this, and I was perfect at this, right? Like I started my career, I lived in Asia for about 6 years, started the company there, all that kind of stuff, speaking on stages. And I was like, I am the gut health queen. Like, but is that really true? If all you're doing is eating soups and smoothies and I've eliminated 13 different food groups and I have to take supplements and I look like a walking pharmacy, like, is that actually true? Or am I just orthorexic and going this whole route? And that was the hardest pill that I had to swallow, right? Like going through this whole thing of being like, well, this doesn't actually take into consideration what my nervous system is doing here, right? And how this is all progressing. And so, yes, I'm here to shake up this industry because it's not right. Because at the end of the day, like, how much more delicious does it sound when I'm telling you, just get these foods in, just do this routine, then do whatever the heck you want. Like this morning, my boyfriend and I were sitting on the couch and he was dunking macaroons in his, I don't know why he was doing this, but he was dunking macaroons in his coffee. And he was like, oh my God, it's so good. Do you want a bite? And I'm like, it's 7:30, but yes, I want a damn bite of that. Like it's things like that where you give yourself the freedom, but it's a progression over time, right? Like this is a 6-year progress that I've done here. Now my clients start to feel better in about 3 weeks, which is amazing. But it's one of those things when we know how the body actually works. And if I'm focusing more on get these things in, right? And like the not so sexy foods, like I'm like, get fatty fish twice a week, support your liver with some organ meats, do these adrenal cocktail things. Then really, do you have space for all this other stuff? And then while we're working on healing your relationship to food by getting more foods in, it's really just this routine-based thing that we can build up. I always say this, the 4 H's in life are we want to be healthy, happy, horny, and hungry. Like these are the things that we want. And we as women have like disassociated from hunger. We like make it the devil. We're like, no, I won't be hungry. And it's like, no, you really should. Like, that's actually a really good sign that your body's hungry because you're living. You need to be hungry. You should have a sense of hunger. And so we work with women on that, where it's like, let's focus on the things we're adding in. Let's do this in this space. And then you get all this wiggle room where I'm like, do whatever you want. Like your body, when you get into this space of, in my programs, we talk about elevating the standard of yourself. Like when you get into a space of having high standards for yourself, you can do the thing that you keep self-sabotaging and self-doing and bringing yourself back down. But when you set a new standard, you don't really want to at the end of the day, but you have the freedom. You can eat macaroons at 7:30 in the morning if you please, but like, it's not like I'm doing that every day. It's like different kind of things that we begin to learn about ourselves because we give ourselves that. So it has this intuitive eating approach matched with, pro-metabolic, with gut-brain connection, with liver support, with adrenal support. Like we're looking at the full body. So she no longer feels like an enemy. We actually just start to work with her, I
love it. I love it. I love it. And how does all of that map on to the menstrual cycle, or how does the menstrual cycle map on to all of that? Like, what can you talk a little bit about that connection?
Yeah. So, even before the call, we talked about it. I was like, I'm not an expert in it, but I did lose my cycle. So for 5 years, I did not have a period. It took me 6.5 years to get it regulated. And it was all due to my metabolism because I crashed my metabolism, right? Like I being on low FODMAP and being this whole quote unquote gut health queen and all this kind of stuff, I was so undernourished that if I'm undernourished, that because you're not really like, if you look at quote unquote low FODMAP food, it's not nutrient dense. Like you're eating soups and smoothies and whatever, like it's very like light foods that don't heal the body. Like there's nothing the body can really utilize. And so my body had to get it from other sources. So, gluconeogenesis. I wasn't eating carbs because quote unquote carbs are bad when you're trying to heal your gut. Your liver then has to produce its own carbs because that's how your body heals, which means your liver can't focus on detoxing estrogen, which it's supposed to freaking be doing and creating it and doing this whole thing. And my body, literally, when I got my test done, it was like, ma'am, you have 0 estrogen in your body. I was like, what do you mean? Like, what? I'm so confused. And doctor, like, for the life of me, they're like, PCOS. Wait, no. Like, we don't know this whole thing happening. And so when I started to implement the practices that I now teach, where it's like, we need to get the body into safety first. We have to look at the nervous system. We have to actually get the body like, okay, we can actually absorb nutrients. And then we actually like, I know a lot of people have a lot of resistance to this, but if you're like me or in my world or are underweight and wanting to not actually accept that about yourself, because we live in a society that does that, your hormones are going to shut down. We have to get into healthy weight, and we do have to gain like 15 extra pounds until we get into the safety. And don't worry, it will come off because we have a set weight point. But if we're not paying attention to our cycles, like if we have horrible PMS, you are not supposed to have PMS. Like, yes, you're tired. You have a little bit like mood swings here and there.
Things
like,
change. Yeah.
Yeah. Like your uterus is shedding. Of course, things are happening.
Yeah. Things happen. Yeah.
Like body needs rest, but it shouldn't be painful where people are like passing, like my mother, right?
Yeah.
This is a good part, actually. So I was told I would have horrible periods because my mom used to, and she passed when I was 22, but she would pass out every time she'd get her cycle. She would have such bad periods that it would knock her out. She'd be hospitalized, this whole thing. So I was told, like, well, this is going to be your fate. I was like, and a lot of us get this, right? Like our mom had this, and like, I got the story from my grandparents, like, oh yeah, like everyone struggles with fertility in our family and like all the things where we then go, oh, I'm a victim of this and I'm no longer going to do up for this. I'm not going to
internalize it and live with it. Yeah,
exactly. But for me, because I am very left brain, I was like, wait, I'm learning about epigenetics. That means I can change this. Like, this means I can change, like, if I get my body into safety, if I just like, doctors are telling me like, oh, like you have to get back on birth control to get your period. I was like, that is why we are in this mess. Like, what do you mean? That's not even a real bleed. And they're like, you're so frustrating. I'm like, thank you. That is the best compliment you could ever give me. Figure out what's wrong with me. Like, that is your job. But they're so intertwined, right? Like if we don't have a healthy metabolism, which is basically the internal thermostat of our body that kills off bacteria, that keeps everything balanced, that, our thyroid, our adrenals, all that kind of stuff. If that's not balanced, girl, your hormones are not going to be balanced, like you're maybe not having a period, or it's sporadic, or it's very heavy, or your skin's doing this, or your brain's doing this. Like we're having all these things, and it's because our body doesn't feel safe, mostly because of our liver isn't being supported. So there's all this estrogen just kind of cycling through, and there's not this balance, and our liver's like, holy raviolis, like what do I do with all this? Like I don't really know. Our thyroid, our temperatures, like they're all off. Like when we should be getting hot in our body, we're getting cold, and we're hangry, and our fingers and our hands are cold. Like that's your metabolism. And if that's not regulated and your hormones are like this, like you're missing the point, like we can't just keep tapping or tacking on these things to keep stacking on it. It's like we have to look at how the whole body, every single organ is interconnected, and keep digging for things, because you are not stuck the way you are, like just because your mother used to pass, like, I don't even know when I get my, like, I mean, I know, right? Like, cause I track, but I feel it because I'm tired and I run my business based around my cycle, but like, I'm not like passed out, like I don't have to go. My first period when I got it back,
it's not detrimental to your lifestyle, if you will.
Exactly. Like,
and I was going to ask you about when you got your period back, what was that? Like, do you remember that experience of getting it back after it being gone for 6.5 years?
I cried. But the first time I got it, so I was still living in Asia at the time.
Okay. The first time you got it ever, or the first time you got it back?
First time I got it back. First time I got it back. First time I got it ever, I was at like a car show and royally embarrassed. But when I got it back, I was still living in Asia, and I don't get migraines, and I was getting pulsating migraines, and I couldn't eat. I didn't eat for like, I don't recommend this. I didn't eat for like 2 days. I couldn't get anything down without feeling like migraines, right? Like it worked you. And I'm sitting there on the phone with my dad being like, what was it like with mom? Like what was it? And he's like, you don't have a period though. Like this can't be that. Like you might just be really sick. Like you should go to the hospital. Da, 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 da. And then I got my period, and I was like, impending doom. Because I was like, I swear to God, if this is going to happen every 28 days, I'm going to lose my shit. Like this is not going to be my narrative. I can't run my company in this. I can't, I'm not doing this. And I know a lot of women that do. My little sister does that. God bless her little cotton socks. Like her, like when she gets her period, like her migraines are so bad, and family doesn't love to work with you, but it was one of those things. But after the second one, totally fine, because that was my thing. I was like, okay, so we're sporting the liver. Like I sat there, I cried, I celebrated with my friends. I was like, it is a whole fucking party right now, like this whole thing. But it was this thing where I was like, this is absolutely not happening for me. Like, I'm going to focus on rest. I'm going to focus on, getting
Good
enough
for you,
starchy
yeah.
foods. I'm going to focus on organ needs. I'm going to focus on really focusing on my adrenals and making sure they're fully supported, and getting my trace minerals, and really focusing on these things that it sounds like a lot, but it's like, I'm adding salt and cream and tartar to things, and drinking orange juice and eating beef liver. Like, it's not that hard, like it's just
Sure.
these little things we have to add in and be intentional about. And yeah, like now everything's fine, and my blood work, it comes back. It's like your health, like every time I get like my pulses and like blood work done, they're like, wow, do you like so strong? Like, what is this? And I'm like, thank you. Like, this was not the case 6 years ago, so I will take it.
That's great. Yeah. And that's a really interesting story, because it's like your period came back when it was really, really wanted. Okay. So you'd been working hard, it sounds like, for a while to try to get it back. And then it comes, and immediately you're back in that trauma narrative, right? From your
Mhm.
family of like, you're gonna suffer, like at
Oh yeah.
talking to your dad on the phone. But I think it's really remarkable that then you were like, no. And not just no, I'm going to make this go away again, or no, I'm not going to honor this, but no, I'm going to honor this enough to align and to live with it. So that's really that I think it's rare that happens.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like working in this field, you have a lot of awareness, right?
Yeah.
Like what the cycle means. And even if that's not my,
Right. Right.
focus, that had been my focus, because I had been at that point trying to get my period back for 2 whole years.
Yeah.
And then even after I had that cycle, right, it took me a year and a half to get it consistent. Like, it took a while to
Sure.
get my body, like anytime, like I talked about that healthy weight, because I was like, oh, like I'm at a healthy weight. And societal norms, whatever. I was like, okay, now I can start to cut. And my body was like, no, ma'am, no, you may not. Like, this is where you're healthy.
Yeah.
And
You're
so
gonna
then I
stay
had to do
here. Yeah.
full mindset work around that, and trusting
Yeah.
that. And like, it's, it's a continuous thing, because still it's when you're from like, you have this kind of mindset stuff, and then you move into this other stuff. You're like, I know it's healthy, but it's, working through all that kind of stuff. But it really is like, when you want something enough, you will stop making your own excuses around it. You'll
I
get out
love
of your
that.
way, and you'll be like, okay, we are here. Like, I desire so deeply to be a mother, and I
Mhm.
refuse to get in my own way about that.
I
You know what
love
I mean?
that. Yeah. Yeah, no, I definitely have spoken to many women that they come at it from that perspective of like, well, it may have been cool to be like anorexic in our 20s, but now that I'm wanting a child, I don't think it's so cool anymore. And that's a lot. I'm not even going to unpack all of that right now. That's a lot. I have a question though. Like, what if you're going in the other direction? Our listeners that are coming from a higher um, body weight and wanting to go down and wanting to work through their, entire wellness and gut, microbiome, all of that. Like, how does that work?
It's kind of the same thing, but reversed, right? Like, you
Okay.
still have to get your body into safety, because if you're overweight, your body is not safe,
Right.
right? Like, as women, and men too, like, I'm not disregarding that, but like, we love to use food as a coping mechanism,
Mm,
right? So it's more so looking at this mindset thing. We're looking at the foundation as to why are we overeating or undereating, right? And then what would that healthy balance be in between that? We still have to eat, like I said, pro-metabolic. We still have to be paying attention to these things. We still have to get our body into safety, and she will naturally start to release weight in the same way. We have to start moving more. We have to start taking care of ourselves. We have to start doing these kind of things to pay attention, because I work with a lot of women that, they've gotten the sleeve, they've taken, they've done all these things, and
mm,
they've been obese, they've gone through this thing, and now they're struggling, and they're like, I can't get my head around this. What's going on? If there's 2 states, right? If our body is in fight or flight, one, she's going to think there is a famine, because we're doing this inconsistency in our eating. We're eating a lot of things. We're, insulin resistance, like all this kind of stuff. She's going to hold weight because she thinks there's a famine. So she is just going to hold on to it no matter how much you diet, no matter how much you over exercise, no, any of this stuff. If she doesn't feel safe, she's like, honey, like, we are in a bear suit right now. Like, this is where I'm safe.
yeah.
And the other side is like anxiety and things like that. Like, it's like, I need to eliminate, because I don't need to have anything in my belly, because there's a saber-toothed tiger coming right now, and we have to be very fast. Like, we don't have to do this. So we see that a lot with, it's our digestion that is mostly impacted when we're in a fight or flight, and our hormones, because we don't need to be digesting food. We either need to save it or lose it. And we definitely don't need to be making babies in that kind of state of fight or flight. Because back in the day, like when our nervous system was created, caveman times, the 3 parts of our vagus nerve, the top of it being our safe space, our community, our connection, was the last part to be evolved. I don't know, whatever, like evolved and made within evolution. And that part and that safety thing. So when there was famine, when there was danger, when these things that are very common to us nowadays, and we like to brush off, when these things were happening in our body back in the day, there was a problem, right? And so our body is responding to millions of years ago presently. And so we have to work with this. And like I said, this is why it's not just the gut stuff. It's not just the hormone stuff. It is the full body nervous system regulation, vagus nerve, gut health, hormones that we really have to, we don't have to obsess with, right? Like we don't have to become experts in it, but we just have to have a general understanding of like, oh, this is why I'm feeling this, and this is why I'm feeling that. And so for like anyone that is overweight and looking at that, that's the mindset stuff as well. That's, the regulation, that's really looking at these kind of things and how do we get the body to feel safe in this kind of thing and move forward from there.
Yeah, I love that. I have a question just for any listeners that have come to this because, it's IBS and if they're on, medication for IBS, like what's your, how do you work with that? Is the goal to get people off it? Is the goal to live on it forever? Like can you talk about that a little bit if you're
I feel like my answer. My answer to that. But yeah, so I work with women to get off of it. I have no problem with people being on it. Like, don't come at me. I just don't like that that's the first approach to things, right? Like I have my medications, I've done that kind of thing. The problem with Western medicine is we do that first before assessing. Like, are you eating enough? What's your relationship to food? Do you have infections we have to be looking at? How's your stress management? Have you dealt with trauma? When did that happen? How are you dealing with that now? Like, we don't have
cycle day are you on today?
Exactly. Like, let me talk about this. Like, no, we have 8 minutes with a doctor who then is like, oh, looks like a problem here. Let me fix it. And no shame about doctors. I get you. I see you, friends with a lot of you. You don't have time for that. Like, that's not a thing that you're there for.
Yeah.
But we have to be able to look at it. And I love like women that do come to me because especially in my community, they're like, yo, I'm not about this anymore. Like I am living on this medication. And if I happen to miss it or forget it when I travel, or I don't have it when I'm on a date, or I don't do these things, like it is a nightmare. I cannot do this anymore. And like, there is so much power in that. But I give the analogy a lot in my master classes where it's like, when we are, we're standing in front of a rushing water and we just happen to fall in, and you're like, and then this log comes through and you grip it for dear life. And then you see your friends on the other side and they're like, come swim this way. And you're like, what if I get a cramp? What if it pulls me under? What if there's a current? Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. So we just cling to it even harder, not actually like ever letting go of it. And we just cling to it the rest of our lives. Like my job is to teach you how to build up strength, to swim around that log, to let go of it for 5 seconds, come back, swim back around it, and then get the strength to know, I think I'm good to let go of it now. And we support the body in that process. It is not a cold turkey thing. It is a progression thing. This is where one-on-one support is more, adapted to feels like that. Because you will, if you've been on them for a long time, there's a big thing like with SSRIs and things like that when it comes to this stuff, your body has been used to that, right? And so we have to slowly get the body off and understand you're going to have offset. And a lot of us would be like, oh my God, my symptoms are coming back. But what's actually happening is your body is withdrawing from being on that medication. That's all that is. Like, and it's annoying, but just white knuckle it, support your liver. And we have to kind of get through it. And there's like certain protocols and like things to do to support this. Again, not medical advice always, like it's just run everything by your doctor, but it's this kind of progression of understanding, again, how our body works, how to best support it, and then how to adapt it so that we can embody it every day.
I love that. I'm also feeling called to ask you, because it's so hot and trending right now in many of the like hormone balancing diets that you're seeing out there on Instagram right now, especially around the perimenopause and menopausal, midlife woman thing, intermittent fasting. What what can you give me your take on that? I have my personal experience with it, which I'm going to say isn't a negative one. I Like it works fine for me. But I also approach it flexibly. Like I'm not hardcore about it. You know what I mean? Like if there's a day where I'm like, I want to have breakfast today, like I do, but a lot of the times I don't want to. So I'm interested to hear your take on this because it's big right now. There's a lot of chatter around it.
Yes, it is. And I absolutely loathe it with every
Oh,
fiber of my being.
all right. Tell me why.
Because
Sister, I have a sister. Are you listening to this? She's a big proponent of intermittent fasting.
Guys, there's one, it's essentially starving ourselves, right? Like we need
Okay.
fuel to heal our body, especially women that have hormonal issues or IBS or anxiety, especially please don't do it. Because it's all based around our blood sugar levels. You fast while you sleep, right? And if your body's being fully supported, again, going back to that gluconeogenesis thing, she can't focus on detoxifying. So she's inflaming and she's putting, these things back into your body, and she's not focusing on your liver is your main organ of detoxification. If you're starving out foods, especially carbs at night, where your body is doing its main clean sweeping, and you're waking up at 3 a.m. and things like that, your body is starved. And if we're not hungry in the morning, that's adrenaline and cortisol. You're supposed to be hungry. You've just been fasting for 8 hours. That is a normal thing. If you're going through the day and you're not hungry throughout the day, why? Then we're not moving our body enough and we're not connected to our body, because a healthy body would be hungry at those times. If you look at looking at regulation, like how I work with my clients, right, is we want to eat every 3 to 4 hours. So you have breakfast, you have lunch, you have a snack, you have dinner, you have a snack, you go to bed, rinse, repeat every single day. No more stress. Your body's not guessing when you're eating, which takes away one of the stressors that a lot of our bodies are struggling with, is like, when am I going to eat? This is very inconsistent. Am I getting fed? Like imagine doing that to a dog or a baby. Right. They'd freak out. They'd be like, what's happening? And like, if you've ever been around a kid that misses their snack time, it's an absolute nightmare. I was a kindergarten teacher for a bit, not fun. And it's the same thing that happens with our body. We're setting off the alarm bells. And so a lot of people are like, this works for me. And it works for you in it helps you lose weight. Sure. Because you're cutting out calories, you're not eating that meal. That makes sense. But in a healing,
what about on the insulin resistance piece? Isn't that a big part of why it's working?
That's the gluconeogenesis part. So it's actually making you, when you would add things back into your diet, your liver is making its own sugar at that time period. So instead of detoxing, it has to make its own, which isn't good for our natural production of it. So we're overdoing it, and it can't actually metabolize it like on a biology level. And then any of the even research on it, majority of it, it's postmenopausal women, rats, and men. It is not women of reproductive age. I don't know. And like, I know it's big for hormone stuff because it's quote unquote supposed to help, but it really is damaging it, because when you come back from it, because I don't think that's something anyone, like, we want to live that way for I don't know, living by food.
Some people that do it for years and years. I mean, do it, always.
Yeah, they live by it. It's like talking to vegans. You're like, oh my God, okay, got it. But we kind of walk through this whole thing where it's like getting the body, like I said, the 4 H's: healthy, happy, hungry, and horny. Like we want to have hunger in our life and not demonize it. And when she knows when food is coming, she doesn't have to freak out about it. And so I'm not saying it's to be cut out, because there is autophagy, there's things like that, there's repairs, there's these kind of things, but that's in a healthy body. If your body is already in a state of fight or flight and she's not healed, then why are we starving her and putting her into a stress response?
Okay.
But
what about can you go back to this thing of like the suppressed appetite? Because like, I know, okay, for me, when I'm doing the intermittent fasting, like maybe the first couple days, I might be hungry around the time that I would be eating breakfast. But after that, I move past it. And I don't really even think about food until around 12, 1, something like that.
It's adrenaline. At the end of the day, you're not eating. So your body is running on adrenaline and cortisol. Like if you were to, I don't even know how you would, test those things or something like that, but we're running on it. This is why a lot of people like coffee, to get over that hunger curve, because it spikes your cortisol and adrenaline. Like it's a suppressant. It kind of boosts this thing and quote unquote masks it. And so it's not really doing anything for your body other than, again, putting it in fight or flight, which is the opposite of what we need if we're trying to heal the body.
So is what you're saying that like, it might feel okay at first. And I'm also thinking of like people that have suffered with chronic illness and moved to like kind of longer term fasting periods and fasting windows that extend a lot longer than intermittent fasting as well. And that also report like a relief of symptoms in that fasting time and all of that.
Well,
Is
you're
that
not,
the same thing? You're in fight or flight, so it feels okay then.
and you're not eating anything. So of course you don't have symptoms, but you're not
Oh,
healing anything either. You're just avoiding conflict,
okay.
like
Yeah.
if you
This
look
kind
at
of is probably at the heart of your thing though, isn't it? Because yeah, if IBS and other chronic illness, illnesses that people are suffering from, like if they're like completely inflamed from the food they're putting inside of their bodies, then yeah, when they stop putting it in, it probably feels better, but obviously that's not a long-term solution. You
exactly.
have a different solution for this is what you're.
And this is why it builds. So it'll often be, okay, so I have food sensitivities, and now I have, my hair's falling out, and now I'm not getting my cycle, and now I have really hard periods, and now I'm getting these weird rashes on my body. Like, it builds, it
Okay.
didn't just start with one thing. And our first thing is always, let me cut out something. And
Mhm.
so, of course, when you're starving out bacteria and you're not eating things, of course, you don't have a flare up. There's nothing there. Like, there's nothing to do anything. But this is why we get symptoms when we do eat things. And so it's
Right.
really like, and I actually have a post coming out next week where it's like if we're just removing a bunch of foods, we're kind of missing the point. It's kind of like when you break up with a toxic boyfriend and yet you keep scrolling his feed, getting super annoyed with what he's doing.
Mhm.
And you're not really solving the problem there. You're not dealing with the emotional problem of that relationship. You're just removing something and keeping that state of fight or flight going on. Like, we actually have to do the inner healing, which is repairing the gut brain connection, which is repairing the metabolism, which is getting that mucus layer around the gut more stable, more thick, doing the digestive enzyme work so that things can get back into place. And then you shouldn't have to eliminate things, like a healthy body doesn't need to miss a meal. A healthy body doesn't need to have all these food rules and medications and restrictions and things, and our bodies are always showing us signals. Like, I can't emphasize it enough. There is treasures in the triggers. So when we sit there and we're like, oh, like, here's how I'm responding to this one food, whatever it is, why? Why is this happening? If it's not an allergy and I don't need an EpiPen and it's not an immune response, why is my GI tract having this inflammation?
Yeah.
And then from there, we actually start to create a new narrative where you get your life back. You don't have to be, I'm safe in this, quote unquote, being the good girl, following these rules so that I can fit into this box and create this whole thing to continue.
Wow. Whoa. Yeah, I know we need to wrap up soon because we've gone over time, but this has been so this is cool. Quite revolutionary, I would say you are in your approach to this stuff. I know a lot of people that I know and love and talk to about this stuff all the time right now, or if they're listening to this, are like, what? But I think that's a good reaction. So I say, just stay with it, absorb it, contemplate it. Let's get into this stuff. Let's continue the conversation here. There is a book that I recently randomly checked out from the library called I believe it's called The Microbiome Diet. Do you know this book? It's pretty famous, or I think it is. I'll find out the author, but like in it is really, it's this person's lifetime research into like what works for people in healing the gut. And it is a lot of like a very kind of regimented diet with some really intense prescriptions of probiotics. Is that a part of your program as well, or is it just not that approach?
Nope, I don't do the extreme things, because if you're, again, going back to, if your body's healthy, you don't need them, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not denying the fact that if you do these things, you'll feel better. Of course you will. You're doing extreme things. Like, that's obvious,
Right.
But the point is to get the body so you don't have to do that. So you don't have to live in these regimented rules. You don't have to take these restrictive things. Like, I'm all here for probiotics. I'm all here for beef liver supplements. I'm all here for, calcium, magnesium, things like that. But we also want your body to be producing things on its own. And it can't do that if we're doing so much and stressing her out. I get they're there for management, but ultimately we want the body to wean off these things so you can eat normally. So you can go out, you can travel, you can go on dates and not worry about what things are going to happen later. And like, oh my God, like being able to go out to eat with friends without being the picky person. Like we want to give people their life back. Whereas what I see extensively in this field is things like that. It is very much around, if you follow this, and I did it for years. That is what I learned in school, right? Like that is everything we learned. And I was like, but when you have disordered eating patterns and you have, you know, histories of trauma and you have all this other stuff, like, yes, I'm going to follow that perfectly because I have an eating disorder and I will crush that out of the park. Of course.
Right. Yeah. Because I know how to do this. Yeah.
I know how to do that very well.
Yeah.
But it's like, but how do I do this if I want a normal life? And this is also why a lot of people don't jump in on healing their bodies, because it looks like that, because it's huge biohacking, like fasting, eliminating expensive supplements, like all this kind of stuff where they're like, no, like that sounds like I have to give up my entire life. I am not, like, I'll try a little bit, but then I'm going to, you know, get mad because I quote unquote wasn't disciplined enough, and I'm going to get in my own way. And then I'm going to keep trying these different things, only causing more stress to my body because now I'm diet dancing and trying all these different things. And it's like, look at your body, listen, look at the organs that need to be supported, listen, do the work to kill off any infections first and foremost, always. And then from there, you start to create a plan that actually meets your lifestyle and your health history and your trauma history and your family history. And you can actually start to make massive leaps in your health.
I love that. Okay. Final thing, what advice do you have for our listeners? If you could, you know, anyone that's listening to this and has come to this because they're suffering with this, what is your advice for them?
Yeah, so thing I exhaust myself in saying, but it's always true, is you cannot be at war with your body and win. It doesn't work. Like I said, there is treasures in the triggers. And so the first thing I always recommend is start with your foundations, right? What are you doing every day before you jump into a diet, before you jump into a cleanse, a colonic, whatever? What are you doing every day that is affecting that thing that you want to change? So if that is your IBS, what are you doing? How often are you eating? What are you eating? Does that really seem like enough to you? How do you feel about it? What environment's in it? Are you actually taking time? Like self-audit yourself for a week before you just chalk it all up and then you get stuck in this diet dance that I was talking about earlier. Like really take this hard look. We have to audit our business. We have to audit our sale. Like we have to do things for everything outside of ourselves. Can you just do that with your health and your wellness for 1 week and kind of pay attention to that in a very, this is just information. Like don't let your shadow sister come in. Don't let her beat you up and be like, you're not good at this, da, da, da. Like use it as just, here's where I'm at. Here is what I want to do next week to make this a little bit better. And then go from there.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much, Laura Patricia Martin. For anyone listening to this that wants to find out more, that wants to hate mail her, just kidding. That wants to say, hey, I'm a diehard intermittent fasting person. No, I'm just kidding. Anybody that wants to learn from this wisdom and engage more with the work and this knowledge that Laura is putting out there in the world, you can find her information, her website, her Instagram account, all of these things in the show notes for this. Thank you so much for being here today, Laura. This has really been a wonderful talk.
Thank you so much.
All right, bye-bye.